Okay, guys, what are some of the worst arguments you've ever heard?
You mean from other staff members?
Of course. No.
Just dig that hole deeper, Brett. Just dig it deeper.
You mean from Christians or from non-Christians?
Either one. Just some of the worst arguments you go, oh my gosh, I can't believe somebody would even offer that up in a serious way.
Well, I'll tell you one that comes to mind right now, and I'm not trying to start a fight with anybody, but, and I'm not trying to campaign for one side or another on this particular issue, but in the discussion about the age of the universe, it troubles me deeply as a Christian thinker to hear people say, you weren't there to see it, I wasn't there to see it, God was the only one there to see it, so we have to hear what God says. Now I'll tell you, and then they make their argument for their particular view based on what their understanding of God says is. Now here's what troubles me about that. It's a subtle adopting of a very non-Christian epistemology. If you see it, you can know it. But if you don't see it, then you can't know it unless God tells you. Do you realize that most of the things that you don't know from experience with your five senses? You know them from different ways. There are lots of ways we know things. We know things from our five senses. We know things from introspection and reflection. We know things from a direct awareness. We know things by authority. I mean, there are lots of ways to know things. And when Christians argue this way, it bothers me. And I don't care, it doesn't matter what side they're defending when they say that. It bothers me that they are taking away tools that we have to make our broader case with the world. If we're saying, we're making basically the empirical argument that the only way you can know things is if you can personally know things, is if you personally experienced or saw it happen. Well, that isn't the only way to know things. There are lots of different ways to know things. And so we aren't just thrown back on a Bible interpretation to give us information if we haven't seen it ourselves. We have a very, very rich recourse of things that we can draw upon as knowers, as human beings made in the image of God, to test the world to see if it's not so. So I don't know if that's what you were after, but that was the first thing that popped into my mind when you said bad arguments.
Anybody else?
I'll give you one that I got from a Christian, and this was when I was doing an atheist role play. I was at a church here in Southern California, and I think I gave the group a real run for their money for about 45 minutes. And I said, okay, and they thought I was the real deal. They thought I was a local community college professor. So they thought I was a real atheist. Do the role play. I asked for the last question, right? And so a bunch of people in the audience were pointing at this older lady who was raising her hand. And, you know, she looked like kind of the wise sage of the group. She had waited to, you know, give her comments at the end. And here I was, you know, about to be demolished. And so she stands up and she looks at me and she says, you know, the reason why you're an atheist is because you love your sin. And you want to, you know, you want to be immoral. And so I responded, and I said, well, ma'am, I think that's a genetic fallacy. You know, you're attacking the origin of my belief. But, you know, I might have good reasons that you haven't dealt with, and kind of went that route. And then she, after, you know, kind of engaged her a little bit, she then looked at me and she said, well, the Bible also tells us that not only do you love your sin, but that we are not to throw our pearls before swine.
Oh, that's nice.
So that was, I think, yeah, so I think the worst argument I heard was that one from a Christian. I hope she's not out there watching.
She's watching online, probably.
Well, you know, I speak a lot on the topic of homosexuality, so naturally I get all kinds of arguments in favor of homosexuality. And in particular, people are now no longer just trying to make the case that homosexual behavior is morally permissible, but they're trying to substantiate it from Scripture. And so oftentimes I'm like, well, you know, what reason would you have for thinking that's the case? You know, that Scripture somehow either condones homosexual behavior or is a neutral on the subject. And surprisingly, I still get the argument that it's because, look, Jesus and John, the disciple whom Jesus loved, were gay. What? They say, yeah, because even in Isaiah 53, it says he was cut off. He was a eunuch. So you look at Isaiah 53, which of course is a prophecy about Christ, and if you just read it in context, never read a Bible verse, it says Jesus Christ was cut off from the land of the living, meaning he was killed, not castrated. But nevertheless, I seriously get that argument quite often. It's bizarre.
Oh my goodness.
I'm not sure I can follow that argument.
Okay, I don't agree. How about the toughest audience you've ever faced?
The toughest audience?
Yeah, do you have a quick story about the toughest audience you've
let
ever
me just throw in one quick thing
Okay.
too about the arguments, just for the sake of I think a battle we have ahead of us as Christians. Part of what drives me crazy is this sense that you cannot make a case about something in the past unless you have certain categories of evidence. So it drives me nuts. Oh, that's just a circumstantial case. Really? That's every case I do. They're circumstantial cases. I've never had a case with direct evidence. If there were good pieces of direct evidence, it wouldn't be cold. I mean, so you really have this issue you have to deal with, is that can we know something from the past if we weren't there to see it, or we can't talk to somebody who was even there to see it? Can we build the most reasonable inference in a compelling way with a cumulative circumstantial case? And what is that category of evidence? Does anyone really even know what the categories of evidence are? And so you constantly have people, especially some of the brightest minds on both sides, on both the Christian side and the atheist side, who don't understand how we build cases and think we have to have a certain kind of evidence, a certain kind of forensic evidence, or a certain kind of direct evidence that I've never had in a case. So I think that's one of the things it's a goal I have to start with. And tomorrow we won't be talking about circumstantial evidence, unfortunately, but it is an important skill set that I think we need to teach people to help them understand how to do it. Every case we do is about making a determination about what happened in the past, and we're not there to see it. But we can figure it out.